you know, being an African American in the 1950s with all the problems we have from a social standpoint, the concern and the scary part is that nobody revisited his case. Um, and the reality is I know that I've said this time and time again, you're a product of your environment. Here's a kid who grew up on the farm and who knows what put him in that situation, you know, wrong place, wrong time, whatever it may have been, and his life was just taken away from him, which is pretty sad. I mean, I think something that Avenues for Justice does fortunate is you get down to the root of the problem, and the reality is that if you grow up in an environment where everything is cyclical, you're a statistic. You're not supposed to succeed like most of us grow up in, and the environments, just like the Lower East Side and Harlem is that you're expected to fail. I look back all the time when I go to the city and I compare it to the way my kids are growing up. The reality is that they're just not in an environment that they're subject to um, violence, crime, drugs, being at the wrong place at the wrong time, because that's just not the lifestyle that they're living. And then you take this gentleman here. I mean, did he grow up in an environment where someone can afford to pay for lawyers, someone can get him legal representation, someone educated him to the fact of, hey, when you get arrested, don't say anything. I mean, you're coerced, and like I said, you just fall into a statistical category that's very cyclical and sad. And if someone would just take out the time to find out what the root of the problem was, I mean, just in this guy's case, where were you? Why were you there? Who was it? Who you were affiliated with? There might be, was he just picked up in a lineup? I mean, I've been in the city and I've just been arrested because there's a sweep and I'm just at the wrong place at the wrong time, and just because guilty by association, I'm on the wrong block, and you just all get arrested. And if you don't know what to say, you don't know what to do, you don't panic. It's all about a conviction. I mean, you can't sit here and say that it's not about the numbers, because that's what prosecutors' jobs are, is to put certain people on the way. The sad part is you have an individual spending 60 plus years in jail, and the reality is that's a cycle as well. Like, it's a business. There's no other way to put it. I mean, correction officers need jobs, court officers need jobs, lawyers need jobs, and it's all about the numbers. And unfortunately, in this case, nobody took out the time to find out what the root of the problem was. And I think that more of that is needed. It's still a problem. Like, the reality is now you're institutionalized after 60 years in prison. Even if you take my case and you take 10 years of prison, you're institutionalized. It's very difficult to cope with society. I mean, what does this guy know? Nothing. I mean, now you're talking about psychological problems, adapting to, if they didn't help him 60 years ago, what government program is going to help him now? It's sad. It's a waste. Like, now, who's to say that, he was hoping that his parents were around. And the article I read, they're not around. He has no real family to rely on. When your life becomes something, and I can tell you this because it was difficult for me to adjust to the civilian world when I just came out of the military and I retired 3 years ago. Like, it was hard dealing with the way. That's why I'm self-employed. I can't go get a job. I can't deal with the normal reality of people. It's difficult. And I could just imagine, after being institutionalized for 60 plus years, what this man's life is going to be on the outside world. I mean, something as simple as, what's a cell phone? Yeah, he had a TV in his room, but I mean, you talk about some of my parents and some of my generation that they struggle, with everyday life of, where technology has gone. Could you imagine, being in your basement for 60 years and coming out seeing the day of light, and now you have to adapt to the world? I mean, this is more than, you know, it's an adjustment to reality, adjustment to society, psychologically. I mean, it's gonna be difficult. I mean, he's free, but again, at what cost? You could say you took his life away from him, but now you got, how do you adapt at that age to what society is? I think I was in that situation to a certain degree. I mean, the last time that I was incarcerated had nothing to do with me. It was guilty by association, and because I didn't know what to say and I was under pressure, and I didn't grow up with my parents, so I was like I was never educated on, hey, when you get arrested, they're there to coerce you, they're there to say whatever you want, and out of fear, you're just like, yeah, sign this, sign that, and now you're being charged with things you didn't even do. And I think a lot of people fall into that, into that system where, be like, oh, the group is being charged for murder. However, if you sign this and plead to a lesser charge, you're not going to be charged with murder. And here you are admitting to a conviction when, you know, you were just at the scene. You were just there, be like, okay, yes, I know this person. And now they just try to get as much information, and you end up signing documents that you have no clue, again, because you're not educated enough to get legal representation. And now you plead to a lesser charge that you didn't even commit in the to begin with. And now you're screwed because, once you sign on the dotted line, now you're going through the criminal proceedings of, okay, now you got to go to court. Now you signed this document. Now you're playing to even a lesser charge, and it's all about the numbers. And it's to say I wouldn't say it's corruption. I mean, that's what they're paid to do, is to try to find out who the true criminals are. But in the process, they're going to lock up as many people as they want, because again, it's a cyclical system that's never going to end. And the reality is if you have the money to pay for a lawyer, or you have the education to know that, cops don't have anything to stand by, nor do they have the authority to freaking make deals with you. You know, you're just uneducated, and you're just gonna fall into the trap of the system. So I think everybody who is uneducated and grows up into, the life cycle of an environment where there's crime, there's corruption, you're doomed and you're expected to fail. Yeah, I mean, what do you know at, 12, 13, 14, 15 years old? I mean, you're a child, and you got adults, just pumping fear into you to say, hey, if you don't do this, if you don't do that, it's going to be a lot worse for you. And at that moment in time, because of fear, um, you're going to do whatever you can to get out of the situation you're currently in, and you don't have them. And I think at those ages, technically you're an adolescent, you're a teenager. What mental capacity do you have? And they're supposed to be the good guys. Oh, this cop is telling me the truth. Hey, he knows the law better than me. He's giving me a sweet deal. Let me just sign. Let me cooperate. And actually, you're trying to do a good deed and cooperating, and you get screwed in the long run.